All
Feels
right,
like a
go
code or
ahead and open
something.
up.
Okay.
So those are items that belong to your father. Um, that watch has been refurbished, and that was passed to me when he died. And then that hat was one of his, and it was made in Ireland. The tag has since fallen out, but that was made in Ireland. And then you've already mentioned the Irish American Club, the Hibernian Club, and that's important. So, what comes to mind when you see those things?
Well, in his later years, my dad took to wearing hats, and he was pretty dapper, you know. And so something like this is kind of indicative of the uh, culture that we grew up with, you know, the tweed and the fabric and the old country kind of brings back some nice memories. That's for sure.
Did he make it to Ireland? Did he travel in Ireland at all?
He went um, in his later in his life. I don't think my mom ever got there, but he went with one of his Hibernian friends, and he got over to Ireland.
And of course,
He
you've been to
enjoyed it.
Ireland as well, and I've been to Ireland. My brother's been to Ireland. So,
Yeah.
what did that mean to you when you finally were able to go? Did you feel that it was a little different than going to Italy or Germany or somewhere like that?
Well, the only other place we've really been is Canada and Puerto Rico and Hawaii, of course. Uh, so yeah, it's different. From what there's a lot of very ancient ruins in Ireland that recall a time when there were knights and
Right. You feel that history.
uh, monks and things like that. So there's a lot of uh, ancient history in Ireland that you don't have in the United States. I mean, they have buildings standing there that were there before Columbus came to America. So, so there's a lot of things that are very, very interesting to see there. That's for sure.
And did you make it to Donegal, which was the place of your family's ancestry?
No, we didn't make it to Donegal. We went to Ennistimon, which is there's family roots there,
Right, right.
and we were in Dublin, and we spent a considerable time with our cousin Tony Doonan, who's over there, and so there were some family things we tried to connect with, and uh, Tony's grandmother was a cousin to my grandmother, so
The McGrath
the
family.
McGraths,
Yeah.
yes, and so we got to see some of that, cemeteries and some of those things.
And
So
the Rynn family was the one from Ennistimon,
yeah,
as I believe. And I know your mother's family, most of them traced to what is Northern Ireland in County Antrim. So really, they had a few different places that the family traces from in Ireland, so far as I know.
yeah, and so there were wonderful things to see there. We saw the Book of Kells and Trinity College, and the bridges over the River Liffey, and things that you hear about in song over here. And so it was a great trip. We
Can
really enjoyed it.
you hold up that jacket? Let's see what it says here.
This is the Hibernians jacket, AOH,
And I meant to wear that watch last time for St. Patty's Day when we had the
and
celebration over
that's the
here, but I
back.
forgot. There it is. Hibernians Akron. And I can recall him being the Grand Marshal of the St. Patrick's Day Parade around '95 or so.
Yeah, he was
Um,
the Grand Marshal one year.
he rode
And
in the convertible and was
yeah,
waving to
waving
everyone
to
and everything.
everybody and all
Yeah,
that stuff. Yeah, and the Hibernians over the years were a social organization, and they had some political clout in Akron, and they're actually it's a national organization. So there were Hibernian clubs in Pittsburgh and Youngstown and other places across the country. It's not just a little club building in Akron, Ohio. It was a national
and I
organization.
can remember going to Christmases there and they would have Santa Claus, and the kids would, come up, and everyone would get a present, and then we would go to St. Patrick's Day, and they would have the Irish dancing, and the live music, and the food, and all that. They had the upstairs kind of ballroom spot, and then they had the downstairs, which was kind of the bar, and they had some dartboards down there, and even some arcade games, as I recall. Um, so I have my own memories. I do remember you guys would go to euchre night, I believe was on Thursdays, and just come home smelling like a chimney, because the amount of smoke that these people would smoke and smoke and smoke. Of course, my mom never allowed smoke in the house, so that wasn't part of our atmosphere. And then you would come. That's just a memory I have of you guys coming home, and maybe we'd had a babysitter that night or whatever, and it was like, whoa. So a little different atmosphere.
We used to go on Wednesday nights and play euchre, and they he paid it $1 or so to play, and then whoever would win maybe $10 or something. But you played, and we would spend a couple hours every week with my parents and playing euchre. And sometimes my Aunt Mattie would play. She was married to my mom's brother, Uncle Doke. His name was Charles, but everybody called him Doke. I don't know why, but they did. And so Doke's wife was Mattie, and Mattie was a card player. She was a real card player. So she would play cards sometimes too, and sometimes my sister Mary played a lot down there too, and Uncle Pat at times. But it was a way to kind of get out and spend some time with my parents and have a few drinks and have a good time. So mom played. My dad was an exceptionally good card player.
I remember playing with him and him getting a little frustrated that I was misplaying things, and he would kind of give a look and go, and grumble a little, because he'd been playing for years, and here I was just starting off.
What
And
is like your other grandfather, with the dominoes. When you do something for years and years and years, you learn little nuances of the game, and it comes easier to you. And then when you play with a newbie, that becomes a challenge. We went through that playing dominoes with
yeah,
Grandpa Nelson. That he was so good at it, he knew what everybody had even without looking. So, um, and my dad was a very good card player, and my mom was a good card player. And when you guys were infants, we would take the playpen and pack the playpen, and you and Pat and go over to Hall Street. And my mom and dad were still living there, and we'd play cards over there sometimes on Sunday nights or whatever. So
and that's something I passed down to my child as well. We'll play cards on a weekend, and me and Natalie and Aaron will play, and he always enjoys coming over here and playing with Grandma too. So
well,
it's
mom's a
been
good
great.
card player, and uh,
And you guys know a lot of games. So I fear that that's going to fall away with the next generation. That they have so many more entertaining options, that they bypass some of that stuff.
well, it'd be a
And
shame because it's kind of a tradition here when we have an event or something, we're going to play games. Usually it's cards, but sometimes it might be something else. And it's all in fun. Mom and I play a lot of cards and Scrabble and stuff like that. So,
I noticed, especially since the COVID pandemic of a few years ago, that you guys have been playing Scrabble really regularly, and I think that in a way that kind of um, sustains a relationship. To have that kind of fun and competitive nature with each other, and to learn and grow. All right, I'm gonna have you close your eyes. I'm gonna move on to the next little item. You're
okay.
doing great.
Oh,
Okay, so this is a little different, but to me, I brought it from my house. But to me, this was a good representation of St. Vincent St. Mary sports, and I know that you were instrumental in starting the ladies cross country there. You coach cross country, and you were involved. You coached wrestling for a long time, and of course you were a wrestler there and did track and cross country and all those things. So you reflect a little bit on the history of St. Vincent St. Mary sports and just what competition and sports have meant to you in sustaining even now and at your 75th year. You're very competitive, and I know you're serving as a role model for me, and I'm sure to my siblings, of how to stay active and use your body in all the competitive swimming that you did. I should mention, when I came over today, the first thing you said is, "Oh, did you bring your bike? Let's go on a bike ride." So to be 75 and want to get out on the bike and want to get in the pool is not something that most Americans are really into. So how is sports, and maybe if you want to go into some of the St. Vincent history, but how have the sports buoyed your life experience?
Well, growing up, our family had developed a personal grit, you might call it, where we were pretty hard-nosed kids, and that helped us, those of us who pursued sports, to succeed. And we didn't have the natural talent or size. Most of my family were smaller people. I was the smallest kid in school for years till I probably my senior year in high school. I was one of the smallest two or three kids in the class, and I also wasn't very strong. So um, I had to develop a little bit of mental tenacity and toughness. And um, on a personal level, I really didn't have much success in sports probably till my senior year in high school, and then I did pretty well. And wrestling was something that in those days you could take a good athlete and turn them into a good wrestler in about 2 years. These days that doesn't happen, but back then, so Coach Rubaugh, he had an eye for getting good athletes. He coached freshman football, so he grabbed the good kids in the freshman football and get them to wrestle. Now, I wrestled 1 year for Russ Pure my sophomore year, and one of my friends had actually talked me into going out for wrestling, and I just really got my butt kicked. But I was with my friends, and we were, contributing to a team, and there were a lot of things. I was a JV my first 2 years of wrestling, and that's a rough road. And a lot of kids these days, they don't want to be a JV. They want to start. And if they can't start, they're going to quit. Well, back then, there were kids that wrestled maybe 3 years and then they finally made the varsity their last year. And that's kind of what happened with me. And, but I worked real hard in wrestling, and I had some very, very good coaches. Uh, and we had the kids we had on a team my senior year were super fantastic. We had 5 seniors on a team, and 4 of them were captains. And the only one that wasn't a captain was me, because I had never been on the varsity before. And our 4 captains, we wrestled 11 dual meets that year, and our 4 captains were 10-1, 10-1, 10-1, and 11-0. I mean, those guys just didn't lose. And we had other kids that were good that weren't seniors. So we had a really good team my senior year, and I learned a lot about hard work and being on a team and sacrificing. I mean, I cut about 12 or 13 pounds to make weight, which to me was a lot. It was over 10% of my body weight. And our 103-pounder cut 30 pounds to make 103. And that guy was tougher than nails. And we all worked really hard. So I learned that you had to put forth an effort, and what you got out of sports was related to a great extent to what you put into sport. So, but I had a pretty good career as an athlete at St. V's. I set the record in the mile run, which um, is held for 32 years. So
And what was
that's
your record? What was the fastest mile that
I
you made?
ran a 4:31 mile my senior year in the regionals. I was actually winning at the end of 3/4 of a mile, and then everybody rocketed past me, including a guy named Dave Waddle, who won the Olympics in the 800 in Munich. So
Not too shabby.
no, so it was good. It was good, and I ran in college 2 years, and that was much harder. That transition from where you worked your way up to being one of the best guys, and then you go into college and you got to start all over. These guys were 5 years older than me. I was 17 and I was running on a varsity cross country team in college. So, these guys were 21, 22 years old. They were men and I was still a boy. So that was a particular challenge. But I enjoyed sports a lot. And St. Vincent was, uh, the jocks were popular there. So there was always a strong tradition of athletics. Um, Once the schools merged in with the St. Mary's, and I taught the first year in the new building. The first year that I taught at St. Vincent-St. Mary was 1972, 73, and we were on two campuses, and it was chaotic. But the football team won the state championship that year, and this was the first year of the playoffs. Ohio had never had state
Right.
playoffs
They had
until that year.
a press champion, a newspaper champion.
Yeah, and it was always Massillon.
Yeah.
Massillon won all these state championships, and then once they had the playoffs, they never won until last year was their first year. And like the 55th year of the playoffs, they finally won a state championship.
Right.
But St. Vincent, St. Mary won that first year, and there were only 3 divisions, and 4 teams from each division made the playoffs. So there were 12 teams in the playoffs. Now there's 7 divisions and like 60 teams in each division make the playoffs. So it's way different than it was.
Some with losing records.
There was a tradition that had long been there, but Coach Stone really built on that tradition. And
he was there for what, 30 years or so?
For over 40 years.
40 years.
And he built on a tradition of excellence, and he had a good staff, and they won. They won state championships. And then the first state champion wrestler was the year before I coached. Bruce Buberlaw's last year, he had the first state champion wrestler out of St. Vincent. And then I was fortunate to have 2 state champions in wrestling, and we sent up, I think, 14 kids in my 9 years coaching. 14 kids made it to the state tournament, and 6 or 7 of them placed, and 2 of them were state champions. And so I was part of a big tradition there, of a tradition of excellence and a tradition of winning